We live in a world filled with distractions, noise, and confusion. Every day we face countless choices, each one pushing us to follow a path. Whether that path is bright with truth or veiled in shadows, but among all the clamor, there is one faculty within us, one quiet but potent power that can lead us through this storm: spiritual discernment. Spiritual discernment is the ability to see beyond surface appearances and recognize deeper truths. It is a profound and often subtle skill, one that distinguishes the shallow from the substantial, the temporary from the eternal, and the noise from the meaningful silence. In a world that is constantly offering us distractions, information, and opinions, discerning the truth requires not only acute sensitivity, but also a deep understanding of the nature of reality itself. The noise of modern life, the constant pull of technology, and the flood of voices all call us to engage, to react, and to follow. Yet within all of this, there is a deeper layer of existence, a stillness that calls us to pause, reflect, and perceive beyond what is immediately apparent. At the heart of spiritual discernment lies the ability to look beyond the outward and the obvious, to recognize the underlying currents of life. Often, what we see is a mere reflection of something much greater. In this world, we are surrounded by appearances, by the way things seem to be. But discernment invites us to look more carefully, to dig beneath the surface, and to seek the deeper meaning that may not always be immediately visible. It challenges us to ask questions, to seek understanding, and to trust in a perception that is not governed by the immediate circumstances or by the conventional wisdom of the crowd. Our senses are powerful tools, but they are also limited. We see only what is in front of us, hear only what is within earshot, and understand only what is framed by our current knowledge and experience. And yet there is so much more that exists beyond what we can perceive. To see beyond surface appearances requires a different kind of vision, one that goes beyond the physical and enters the realm of the spiritual. This vision is not based on the facts that we can measure or the details we can touch, but on an inner perception that aligns us with a deeper reality. This deeper reality is often difficult to grasp because it is not something that can be captured by logic or reason alone. The world is full of mysteries, some of which are meant to be pondered, not solved. Discernment helps us navigate these mysteries, providing the insight needed to distinguish between what is truly meaningful and what is simply transient or deceptive. It enables us to identify the heart of a situation, the essence of a decision, or the truth of a relationship, even when the outward circumstances may seem ambiguous or uncertain. It is the quiet ability to see through the layers of illusion and to perceive the deeper currents that shape the course of our lives. This discernment does not come easily, nor does it come quickly. It is not a gift that is bestowed in a single moment, but rather something that is developed over time. We must train ourselves to listen to the subtleties of life. To see beyond surface appearances, we must first be willing to look within. Much of our external world is a reflection of what is going on inside of us. Our emotions, biases, fears, and desires often cloud our judgment, causing us to make decisions based on what we want to believe rather than on what is true. When we cultivate spiritual discernment, we learn to separate our inner chaos from the quiet truth that lies beneath. We begin to see that many of our initial impressions are colored by our own expectations and projections, and that true discernment comes when we are able to clear our mind and heart of these distortions. But this does not mean that discernment is always easy to achieve. The challenge of seeing beyond surface appearances is that we are often attached to our perceptions. We are attached to our ideas, to our worldview, and to the comfort of our beliefs. To break free of these attachments requires courage, humility, and a willingness to question everything that we thought we knew. We must ask ourselves, what is motivating me to see things in a particular way? Is there another perspective that I am ignoring? What am I afraid to see or acknowledge? These questions are not always comfortable, but they are essential to the process of discernment. It is only when we are willing to confront our own biases and assumptions that we can begin to see with clarity. In doing so, we open ourselves to the possibility of deeper truths that transcend our limited perspectives. It is important to note that seeing beyond surface appearances is not about dismissing the external world as unimportant. On the contrary, it is about recognizing that the outward appearances of things are often indicative of deeper realities. The physical world and our experiences within it are not separate from the spiritual realm. They are intertwined. We must learn to read the signs, to listen to the whispers of the unseen, and to recognize that there is more happening than what meets the eye. Discernment, then, is the key that allows us to navigate the complexities of life with wisdom. It is not about making snap judgments or reacting impulsively to situations. It is about taking the time to pause, reflect, and seek the deeper meaning in all things. It calls us to step back from the immediate and the obvious. This is a process of constant growth as we learn to trust our intuition, our instincts, and our inner guidance. At times, spiritual discernment can feel like a mystery, as if we are walking through a fog, unsure of what lies ahead. But in those moments, we are invited to trust that the deeper truths are always there, just beneath the surface. As we develop the ability to see beyond appearances, we gradually learn to discern the hand of the divine in all things. We begin to recognize that the world around us is not merely a random series of events, but a carefully woven tapestry of purpose and meaning. Each moment, each interaction, each experience has something to teach us if we are willing to look beyond the obvious and into the heart of things. It is also worth noting that spiritual discernment is not limited to our personal experiences. It extends to our relationships, our work, and our interactions with others. To discern means to see others not just as they present themselves on the outside, but as they truly are. It calls us to understand the hidden motivations and desires that drive their actions, to recognize the shared humanity that unites us all, and to respond with compassion, wisdom, and grace. The ability to see beyond surface appearances opens up new dimensions of connection and understanding. It enables us to cultivate deeper relationships, to navigate difficult situations with clarity, and to make choices that are aligned with our highest values. It allows us to walk with a sense of purpose, knowing that we are not merely reacting to the world as it is, but actively engaging with it from a place of deeper wisdom. As we continue to cultivate the power of spiritual discernment, we move closer to the truth that lies at the heart of existence. In learning to see beyond surface appearances, we begin to align ourselves with this greater truth, and in doing so, we unlock the potential for a life that is rich with purpose, understanding, and peace. Spiritual discernment requires clearing distractions and embracing inner quiet to hear the voice of wisdom. In our busy, fast-paced world, the ability to pause and listen deeply has become a rare and often neglected skill. The constant influx of information, the demands of daily life, and the bombardment of external stimuli make it incredibly difficult to find moments of stillness. Yet, it is in these moments of quiet, when we allow ourselves to step away from the noise, that we become receptive to the deeper truths that guide us. To discern wisely, we must first create space for it. This space is not only physical, but mental and emotional as well. Our minds are cluttered with thoughts, concerns, and distractions. From the trivial to the profound, we often find ourselves pulled in many directions, leaving little room for the quiet guidance of spiritual discernment. Whether it's the pressure of work, the complexity of relationships, or the endless flood of media and opinions, the external world continuously demands our attention. The more we are focused on these external distractions, the harder it becomes to listen to the subtle voice within, one that is calm, quiet, and ever. The practice of discerning requires us to step out of the relentless pace of life. It asks us to slow down, to be still, and to create an internal environment where we can truly hear. In a world that values action and noise, stillness might seem counterproductive, but it is in this stillness that the most profound wisdom arises. Finding inner quiet is not about escaping life or ignoring responsibilities. It is about establishing a deeper relationship with the present moment and the wisdom that resides within it. In the stillness, we find clarity. We begin to differentiate between the transient voices of anxiety, fear, or desire, and the deeper, steadier voice of truth that is available to us. This requires patience, as it is easy to become frustrated when we cannot immediately access clarity. However, with practice, we learn to trust that the quiet moments of reflection will yield insight when the time is right. This act of clearing distractions is not merely about retreating from the world. It is about learning to operate from a place of centeredness amid the noise. It is about cultivating the ability to distinguish between what truly serves our well-being and what simply distracts us from our deeper purpose. It is easy to get lost in the endless cycles of modern life, constantly reacting, constantly busy, but the art of discernment invites us to step back and evaluate whether our actions align with our true values and deeper purpose. The distractions that hinder discernment are not always obvious. Sometimes they come in the form of our own desires, biases, or fears. Our inner distractions are often the hardest to recognize as they are deeply ingrained in our thoughts and behaviors. To clear these internal distractions, we must first become aware of them. This means recognizing when our emotions are clouding our judgment or when our desires are influencing our choices more than our values. By becoming mindful of these tendencies, we can begin to quiet them and create space for discernment to arise. Another challenge in clearing distractions is learning to quiet the mind. In a society that encourages constant thought and mental activity, learning to quiet the mind can be difficult. It requires intentional practice, whether through meditation, contemplation, or simply allowing ourselves to pause for a moment and breathe deeply. These moments of stillness provide the space we need to hear the voice of wisdom within. Over time, we cultivate the ability to tune out the mental chatter and listen for the deeper guidance that leads us toward clarity and truth. Once we have created space for discernment, we become more attuned to the inner wisdom that directs our steps. This wisdom is not always loud or dramatic. It is often subtle, a quiet knowing that guides us with gentle clarity. The more we listen and practice discerning, the more we recognize how this voice shows up in our lives. It might appear as a quiet conviction, a sense of peace, or a gentle nudge that guides us toward a decision. But regardless of how it manifests, we learn to trust that this inner voice is a steady and reliable source of guidance. Clearing distractions also requires a willingness to embrace silence, not as an empty void, but as a space filled with possibility and potential. Silence allows us to hear the deeper stirrings of our soul, to reflect on our true desires, and to discern the path that best aligns with our highest good. In a world that is often noisy and filled with chaos, silence becomes a refuge, a place where we can reconnect with our true self. The process of clearing distractions and embracing inner quiet is not always easy, but it is necessary if we are to access the depth of spiritual discernment. It requires commitment, patience, and practice. The more we learn to create this space within ourselves, the more we open ourselves to the subtle whispers of truth that guide us. And as we do, we begin to live in alignment with the deeper wisdom that calls us forward, ever toward the light of understanding and clarity. Spiritual discernment is a journey that requires humility. acknowledging our limitations and recognizing that true insight is not something we can attain through our own will alone. This realization is essential because it opens the door to receiving wisdom that surpasses our own understanding. Humility, in this sense, is not about thinking less of ourselves, but rather about thinking of ourselves less. It is about stepping out of the way, letting go of our own preconceptions, and allowing a higher wisdom to guide us. Humility is the quiet recognition that we are not the center of the universe, that our perspective is finite, and that there is always more to learn. The process of spiritual discernment is deeply intertwined with humility. It is about understanding that we do not have all the answers, and that our perceptions, no matter how keen they may seem, are always limited. This kind of humility requires a certain openness to the unknown, a willingness to be corrected, and an understanding that there are dimensions of truth that may be beyond our immediate grasp. When we approach discernment with this humility, we position ourselves to receive wisdom that might otherwise elude us. This humility is not born out of a sense of inadequacy, but from a profound awareness that true wisdom comes from a source beyond ourselves. It comes from an acceptance that there are truths that exist beyond the realm of our understanding, and that our own knowledge is but a small part of a much greater whole. But when we cling too tightly to our own views and resist the possibility that we might be wrong or limited, we close ourselves off to deeper insights. Humility, in the context of spiritual discernment, asks us to let go of these attachments and embrace the possibility of seeing the world and our circumstances through a lens that is not limited by our own biases. When we are humble in our approach to discernment, we become more receptive to the guidance that comes from a higher source. This guidance often does not come in loud dramatic forms, but rather in quiet nudges, subtle shifts in perspective, or gentle impressions. It can be easy to dismiss these smaller signs, especially when we are driven by our own desires or expectations. But humility helps us recognize that even the smallest shift in awareness can carry profound meaning. It reminds us that even the most ordinary moments can hold divine significance. The role of humility in spiritual discernment is also about learning to trust the process. It's easy to become impatient when we do not immediately receive the clarity we seek. We might try to force answers or push for solutions before we are truly ready. But humility teaches us to trust in the timing of things. It encourages us to wait when necessary and to recognize that sometimes discernment requires patience. When we humble ourselves, we acknowledge that there is wisdom in waiting and that answers will come when the time is right, not when we dictate it. This humility also requires a deep surrender. It is one thing to acknowledge our limitations intellectually. It is another thing entirely to surrender to them in practice. True humility and discernment means not only recognizing that we do not have all the answers, but also releasing our need for control. It means letting go of the need to have every aspect of our lives figured out and accepting that some things may remain unclear for a time. It is through this surrender that we create space for the divine to work in our lives, for the wisdom that is far greater than our own limited perspectives to enter and guide us. Humility also plays a crucial role in how we relate to others in the discernment process. In our relationships, it is easy to believe that we know what is best for others, that we can see things more clearly than they can. But humility reminds us that each person is on their own journey and that we cannot always see the full picture of their lives. Just as we seek discernment for our own path, this humility opens the door to compassion, empathy, and understanding. It allows us to listen more deeply, to offer support without judgment, and to trust that everyone is walking their own unique journey with their own lessons to learn. When we approach discernment with humility, we begin to see the world through a broader lens. We understand that our own perspective is not the only valid one, and that there are many ways of interpreting a situation or understanding the truth. Humility allows us to be open to different viewpoints, and this broadening of perspective is essential for spiritual growth, as it enables us to understand the interconnectedness of all things and to appreciate the wisdom that exists in places we might have previously overlooked. One of the most challenging aspects of humility and discernment is learning to let go of our ego. The ego, with its desires, fears, and attachments, often stands in the way of true insight. It is easy to make decisions based on what we want, rather than what is truly best for us. But humility invites us to release our grip on these desires and to allow the process of discernment to unfold naturally. It calls us to surrender the need to control the outcome. Humility also encourages us to seek guidance from others. It is a reminder that we are not meant to walk this path alone, and that the insights of others can be a vital part of our discernment process. While we must ultimately make our own decisions, humility enables us to recognize when we need help, advice, or support. It teaches us to lean on the wisdom of others, not out of weakness, but out of a recognition that none of us has all the answers. In a community of humility, we can share our doubts, seek counsel, and find clarity in the collective wisdom of those around us. As we continue on the journey of spiritual discernment, humility remains one of our greatest allies. It is the foundation upon which the process of discernment is built. Without humility, we are prone to overconfidence, arrogance, and self-deception. But with humility, we are open to the guidance of the divine, to the wisdom of others, and to the truth that exists beyond our own limited perspective. Humility does not diminish our strength or intelligence. It enhances them by reminding us that we are part of something much greater than ourselves, and that true discernment comes not from the strength of our own will, but from the openness of our hearts. Spiritual discernment is a journey of growth, not perfection, shaped by progress and learning. It is not a static skill that can be fully mastered in a single moment, nor is it something that can be perfected at once. Rather, it is a dynamic process that unfolds over time, shaped by our experiences, our reflections, and our continual willingness to learn. Each step along this path offers us new insights, and each moment of discernment adds to our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. One of the most important things to recognize about spiritual discernment is that it is not about reaching a state of flawless understanding or perfect decision-making. It is about learning how to better attune ourselves to the guidance that is available to us. It is a process that requires patience and deep trust that over time we will grow into a fuller understanding of the truth. As we make decisions and navigate the challenges of life, there will be moments when we feel certain and others when we experience doubt. The presence of doubt does not invalidate our discernment. It simply highlights the ongoing process of learning and growth. When we approach spiritual discernment as a journey of growth, we begin to embrace the idea that we are constantly evolving, and that each choice we make, each challenge we face, it is through this process that we begin to build the muscle of discernment. Just as a musician refines their technique through practice, or an athlete improves their performance with each training session, part of this growth involves learning how to listen more deeply. The ability to discern the subtle voice of wisdom requires us to cultivate a sense of awareness that grows over time. In the early stages, we might miss important signs or misinterpret the guidance we receive, but as we continue to reflect, ask questions, and develop our understanding, we begin to hone our sensitivity to the quiet nudges and deeper truths that guide us. Over time, we develop a stronger connection to our intuition, a deeper trust in our ability to perceive what is true, and a clearer sense of when something feels right or wrong. In the same way, discernment teaches us to recognize when we are not yet ready to make a decision. Not all moments of discernment result in immediate clarity or action. There are times when we must step back, wait, and allow more information to come to light. This period of waiting is often uncomfortable, but it is a crucial part of the process. It is during these times that we learn the value of patience and surrender, trusting that in due time the path will become clear. There is wisdom in waiting, in resisting the urge to rush decisions or push for an outcome before the moment is right. Learning how to sit with uncertainty and trust that clarity will come in time is a key aspect of spiritual growth. Additionally, the journey of spiritual discernment is marked by self-awareness and reflection. As we grow in our ability to discern, we become more attuned to our own motivations and inner landscape. We learn to recognize when our desires, fears, or biases are influencing our decisions. The more we reflect on our experiences, the more we can see patterns in our choices and recognize areas where we might need to grow. Discernment invites us to ask deep questions about our own hearts and minds. What is motivating me right now? Am I making this choice out of fear, pride, or love? The more we engage in this process of self-inquiry, the more our discernment grows, allowing us to make choices that are more aligned with our highest good. Growth in discernment also involves learning how to balance different perspectives and sources of wisdom. As we progress, we become more skilled at incorporating various forms of guidance into our decision-making. Whether it is the wisdom of others, the insights we gain through prayer or meditation, or the guidance we find in scripture, literature, or nature, spiritual discernment involves learning to listen to many voices while discerning which is the most aligned with our truth. This ability to synthesize multiple perspectives requires humility, patience, and a willingness to let go of our own preferences when they are not in alignment with the greater good. One of the most beautiful aspects of spiritual discernment as a journey of growth is that it is not a solitary pursuit. As we grow, we often find that the process involves others, whether through shared experiences, conversations, or communal support. We are not meant to walk this path alone. As we open ourselves to the wisdom of those around us, we find that the collective understanding deepens. Spiritual discernment invites us into community, into dialogue, and into the shared learning of others. This interconnectedness allows us to learn from each other's experiences, challenges, and triumphs, helping us all grow in wisdom together. Ultimately, spiritual discernment is about progress, not perfection. It is about moving forward with a heart open to learning, a mind receptive to insight, and a spirit ready to evolve. Through this lens, we begin to see that spiritual discernment